Let me start with my actual introduction. When I first moved to Ohio, I made the cardinal sin of pronouncing our city manager's name wrong, and ever since he and I have become mortal enemies. Despite our differences and keeping our motto of putting service above self, I felt it important to ask him to come and talk with us today. Many of you already know Dave's bio, so rather than drone on about him, I asked his staff to tell me a little bit more about him so I could give him the introduction he actually deserves. Unfortunately, most of them either refused or just said no comment, but those willing to share did say the following. Many people said, you see Dave riding around on his bike around our beautiful city and county, and they think it's because he loves to ride his bike. But that's not it at all. The real reason is that he lost his car keys 3 years ago and he's too cheap to get another set. Another staffer discussed a side bet going around the office that Dave is the love child of Richie Cunningham and Charlie Brown's teacher. They're looking for a sponsor to get a DNA test. One of the challenges is that Dave's hair hasn't moved in 7 years, so they'll have to get creative in collecting a sample. As of last week, the kitty is up to $37.50. So if you want in, you've got to call somebody special who works for Dave. Living in Kent for 15 years, one staffer remarked on how Dave has not physically aged during that time. The staffer presumed that either Dave is indeed a vampire or it's because he delegates 99% of what he takes credit for. Yeah. Now, before I finally let him roast me and share information with the rest of you, I will share something that's actually true. I read an article yesterday about the power of the Rotary Club. And this is, I'm not kidding, actually true. The Seattle Mariners president and CEO was just fired for inflammatory things that he said at a local Rotary meeting. Well, with that, Dave, and no further ado, I'm privileged to introduce you, Dave Ruller, to speak with our Rotary Club.
Wow. You all can hear me okay? Is that good? Okay. Because I have to say, I'll get to Todd's comments in a minute, but logistically here, I may be looking over here because you all, with the exception of Todd, are much more attractive on my big screen than my little screen. So don't take it personally. I'm not avoiding eye contact if I'm looking over here. I do have a cheat sheet in front of me too. So forgive me if I occasionally glance down at that. And I hate this box. I feel like I'm trapped in like the Zoom world somewhere, and I'm a mover by nature when I talk, and so I married an Italian and I seem to absorb her traits, so my hands, and I can't sit still. So if I bother you too much, if I'm like moving, just do something, throw something at me if you can, and I beg your indulgences up front. There's way too much to talk about. I mean, I honestly, Roger was in to see me a couple weeks ago and he was giving me his New Rockney speech. We got to go, fight, fight, fight. COVID, we're going to beat this thing. And I appreciated that. It was good timing because like a lot of you, this has been kind of a pretty disparaging time. Disparaging, depressing, all those D's. It just, it's not been a lot of fun. I'm not a fan of COVID, just try as I might. About the only thing I'll give it credit for is that it kind of has given us an awful lot to look forward to and to forget about all this stuff that we've had to deal with. I mean, I got on this call early, and the first 20 minutes, we're talking about where we're getting tested, what's happening, all the reactions, and it's just dominated our lives in such a way that, frankly, I'm tired of talking about it, but I know I can't avoid the topic. I mean, I asked Todd, if he had any suggestions for what I should talk about. And, besides him, he wanted me to talk about COVID and a lot of the impacts of that. So I will spare Todd. I mean, I do have a multitudinous amount of thoughts in it right now running through my brain about a commentary on Todd, but now that I've heard that the Seattle Mariners got fired, I better just watch myself this afternoon. So look, there's a lot of thoughtful people on this call. So I'm going to give you a little bit of what I call sort of my philosophical meanderings, and maybe it's just group therapy. So forgive me, and just I'll eventually get to the good stuff, really, in terms of the million things that are going on. Even though all we talk about is COVID, there's, as Roger reminded me, we still did all the things we do as a city every day. And you all have done this in your own lives too. So we're not trying to brag about this, but I know for myself, I kind of needed that gut check or that kick in the backside from Roger that said, no, we got a lot to be proud of. I mean, I'd say, and I didn't take a full tally, I bet half of our workforce has had COVID. So we've been, obviously we've been operating for about a year now in operations mode, emergency operations mode, which literally creates a parallel organization, and we all have different duties specifically assigned for emergency operations. We have a unified command team, a logistics team, a planning team. I mean, and it crisscrosses all the departments. Its sole purpose is to kind of stay out in front of COVID, react to COVID, and put it behind us as fast as possible. But before I kind of dig into those details, I mean, one thing I will say, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but I have a sense COVID did teach us something, in particular about our economic strengths, particularly our downtown. By taking people away, it was a big gut check for what makes Kent special. And what I mean by that is we're very much a social bunch. And we do need our together time as much as we need our alone time. And this current COVID situation denied us that together time, or certainly changed, it moved our cheese, right? I mean, it was a significant change. And the end result of all that for over a year is sort of like becoming unhinged as a person, as a community, as a downtown. So it's really been kind of an interesting thought process for us to kind of step back and say, well, we were actually doing great pre-COVID. Kent's downtown, and not just the downtown, because that was always the launching pad. The plan was, you create this engine in the middle of your community and let it spread out from there. And dang it, if the plan wasn't actually working. And then along came COVID and really kind of rearranged the deck chairs on us. And honestly, we've struggled. Our downtown has struggled. Our businesses have struggled. Now, it's not uniformly across the board. Tom Wilkie, our economic development director, gave his presentation to council last month. And honestly, there are plenty of actually businesses in our community that have thrived during COVID. Now, a lot of them tend to be somehow related to medical supplies or equipment of that nature. But obviously our biggest employer, Kent State, has survived. I wouldn't say it's thrived. It's doing great under the circumstances, but it's just another reminder that we're really an ecosystem. Our community works together as a college, as a business community, as the public sector, as the nonprofits, as the city school system. I mean, all these pieces really depend on the strength of one another to lift us, because we're not naturally blessed with super amount of resources in our community. So anything we do, we kind of got to do together, and together has kind of been taken out of the equation. So that has really caused us to, retrench, but also regroup. And this is kind of getting to Roger's point. I was stuck in the retrenchment mode, I think. I mean, honestly, it's literally kind of blinders on every day, dealing with the next crisis of COVID, and it's a moving target. And, whether it's, I'm sure Tom and George could relate to this, whether it's delays in vaccines arriving from southern ports because of weather, or you name it. There's all kinds of issues that literally pop up, certainly none of which we planned for. But at the end of the day, the design principles of our downtown was people-centered. It was a people-centric design. And I jokingly say, we made sure we had lots of butt-friendly places. And I mean, posterior, places to sit, places to enjoy your outside, places to mingle with other people, places to mix with other people. That's really what makes Kent great. It's not the concrete, the restored buildings, it's not the renovated buildings by themselves, or the patios, or even the river that runs through downtown. It's us, honestly. I mean, that's sort of the big takeaway from me is it's the people that make Kent special. And we have a unique mix, obviously, that not a lot of communities our size are blessed with. And many of you are included in that, maybe not Todd, but the rest of you are certainly an important part of our community. And we've been so isolated that I think it's just been hard to kind of get our traction back. But I say that more, as I mentioned earlier, is my therapy session. Because honestly, there's a lot going on. I've had to kind of get off that, be pushed off that a little bit to keep thinking about, look, the other thing that we do well is we come back, we bounce back, knock us down, we're going to get back up until we get kicked in the teeth again. And that's kind of what's happened is, in preparation for this, I try to think a little bit, what sort of the overarching message. And it really is the same message that created the downtown renovation in the first place. There's collaboration, cooperation, leadership, creativity at all levels, and civic responsibility or civic engagement. Everybody in their own way has sort of pitched in here. And so it's great for me I get invited to things like this, and people like to say positive things, hopefully, about the city in one form or another, but we're all in this together. And to me, that's what COVID taught us more than anything else. We only succeed together, we fail together, we get scrappy, we're going to pick ourselves back up together. So again, I guess that's Roger's fault that I'm rambling on that, because he kind of planted those seeds and said it's actually, we should be proud of where we're at. And hopefully you'll hear some of those points of pride as I talk through this. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not so Pollyannish here that I get it. Living together can be messy, right? It's not quite so easy. And if nothing else, this last 12 months certainly had plenty of, I don't know if you call them high points or low points, in terms of the messiness of whether it's politics, social interactions, just living together is not always simple. But I guess for me, the pandemic was kind of that, you know what, life is short. And I don't know if you noticed, the governor asked for all the flags to be at half-mast across the state of Ohio in honor of the 500,000 people that have passed. It's just astounding, the total number. So it's real, right? And this is not just some news story. This is something we're all living with. So life is short, and despite our flaws, I think we've kind of walked away from all this that it's worth it. We're worth it, imperfections and all. So taking that sort of philosophy, we come back to like the downtown. Downtown is sort of where all that stuff most obviously takes place for us. So we're recommitting. Council's been we never uncommitted, we never decommitted. And honestly, a lot of the activities that you saw, we closed streets last year, trying to create social distancing outdoors. Some of those creative solutions were so popular, we're going to continue those. We created the outdoor dining district where you can take your alcohol from walk around downtown. Very popular, and despite some sleepless nights early on, like, is this thing going to be untenable or is it going to work? It worked fine. It wasn't even, the police are some of the biggest fans of it. They said absolutely, it works great. So we'll continue. You'll continue to see a lot of that and more of that. And please, as you walk away from this and you hear my thoughts, this is sort of an open season on good ideas. So if you got some, share them, let us know. I know Roger, at the last council meeting, he asked to talk about some downtown stuff. And we've been talking about it, and we actually have it on our calendar next month to have a couple new items go back before council on downtown. So I guess I just want to put a plug out there. We have no ownership or pride of ideas, good ideas in particular. So if you see things in other communities, or you hear about things or just have a good idea of your own, please share it. There's no bad idea except Todd. So let me kind of jump into the kind of the nuts and bolts stuff. And usually it's the stuff that you guys, and I know council most enjoys, like what's happening, who's doing, what's going on over here, what's going on over there. So I will refer to my notes for that because frankly, it is confusing. There's stuff going on all over, and I may be somewhat dated here. Honestly, I try to get updated as late as this morning on some of this stuff, but God knows it's a moving target. So some of the stuff you probably know, maybe some you won't know, but even sitting here at my window, looking out over Haymaker Parkway, I can see contractors working in the former Pizza Fire building. That place is now going to become Uncle Mattio's Pizzeria. And maybe you don't know Uncle Mattio's. I didn't know Uncle Mattio's, but they're a national chain. They are very similar in concept to Pizza Fire. It's a customized, personalized pizza as you walk in. A couple of statistics that they threw at us. They make 3 types of doughs. They have 6 sauces, 45 toppings, and they create 200 pizzas an hour. And their year-to-year sales growth has been 50%. So they're legit. They're the real deal, and we're excited to see them come in kind of a prominent vacant space right there in Haymaker Parkway. So they're rolling in, and I can kind of see over the tops of the buildings. There's been a crane working downtown, right around the corner of Erie and Franklin, and that's a couple projects actually. Right now, it's mainly just the new apartment building, 16 units, apartments on the top floors. Then there will be a bakery and a restaurant on the first 2 floors. That's the former, what is it, Romello's corner there. So that is underway. The foundation is busy being done. Next door to that is the, I don't know if they have a name for it yet. It's another apartment complex, basically by the same ownership group that has the Avant 220, that has the Landmark. So they have such a long waiting list in those properties for people who want to live downtown. They're moving forward with I want to say 35 unit apartment complex down there on Franklin Avenue. Sadly, I'm sure you all know that Trano is no longer with us and won't be coming back. So it's such a prime location. It's such a prime building. Keep in mind, Mr. Burbick spent $750,000 to renovate and restore that thing. So it's ready. I mean, and there's been good interest. I'm not personally involved in it because it's a private transaction, but I know there's been a couple of groups, restaurant groups that are quite interested in that. So we're thinking it'll reopen this year. But also I will tell you that strip that strip of Franklin is the area that we blocked off every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night and put picnic tables out there and let people sit out there. That was a big success. So we're absolutely planning to do that again as soon as the weather cooperates. And we're actually going to council to ask them maybe expand some of that, maybe for the full summer, almost keeping it pedestrian only, that one block. Just a thought, still got to go to council, but it was so popular. The businesses, Charlie Thomas loved it, Taco Tano's loved it, Trano loved it before they went out of business, but that group down there it works really well, right? It's like some of the places in Cleveland where you could kind of walk around, like we were talking about hanging lights, stringing lights across the street. So, let's look for that. That could be something new if it all comes together. If you didn't know, Barrios expanded. Now, so Barrios has been one of our, I don't want to say saving graces, but been a real blessing in disguise because they're so popular. That's the Mexican restaurant downtown. They moved into what was the Yogurt V space. So Yogurt V unfortunately left us, but Mario's jumped right in and they got expanded seating all in there. They're talking about seating outside. I mean, so a successful business like that growing is always a good thing from our perspective. A couple other ones that I had, I think I'm out of order here. So many of you may have seen, as Tom Wilkie said, Wendy's is literally rebuilding the building, but I mean, it's about as close as you can get to starting off from scratch. I mean, Wendy's on East Main has taken everything off and putting it all new back on, but it's not a new building. One thing you will notice about that though, that whole stretch of street has trouble with traffic, turning movements. It's the highest accident corridor in the city. But one of the things that they did is they bought that property. It used to be the restaurant. Oh, shoot. What was that old time restaurant?
Robin Hood.
Robin Hood.
Thank you. They bought that property. And so they'll going to put a driveway access there, so not everything has to come all onto Main Street, because that's kind of the bigger hazard. So they're really busy on that. We've got North Water Street. The city has a $1.3 million improvement project in Water Street between basically Fairchild Bridge and Main Street. That was that mill district. And remember, there was a better block project there where we invited residents and businesses to come up with ideas to make that a more active, engaged corridor. And they did that in 2018, I think. Took those ideas and built it into a project that we pitched to ODOT. It's going to improve traffic. It's going to narrow the lanes, because remember now with the mill closed, we don't have that kind of big truck traffic coming in and out of the mill that required such extra big lanes and so forth. So, and remember, the mill was sold. The mill was sold to the same family that's building the apartment, bakery, and restaurant at the corner of Franklin and Erie. So they own both properties. They're focused right now on the Erie bakery, restaurant, apartment. But as they finish that up, they hope to shift gears on the mill. Remember also, the city bought 3 properties next to the mill, sort of land banking them, with the thought being maybe we get a more, we could attract a higher use if we cobbled a bunch of pieces together. Not necessarily, we can sell it individually, but at least give it a chance to maybe be a combined bigger project. We found, like certainly in the downtown, if you can bring a couple parcels together, make it a bigger project, you can tend to attract a little bit better stuff. So that was the theory. We've had a lot of looks at it. No one's bought it. No one's submitted anything. Actually, I wouldn't be surprised if once the family that finishes the Franklin Erie project starts looking at the mill, I wouldn't be surprised if they knock on our door, because they have said in the past, we have some ideas and we may want to buy your property, but we're just not there yet. So we'll still show it to anybody that wants to see it. In the meantime, I know Mike Beater owns a property right next door to that too. And I'm told, despite, if it weren't for COVID, he probably would have had a concept for a bar in there much further along. He had some pretty cool ideas. He worked for Kent State, have a mezzanine concept. It's an interesting building. So, and just down the street from that is a new one. It's the North Water Brewery Company. Sorry. That had a quiet opening because of COVID, but it's cool space. It's locally owned, locally operated, and it's home brew that, for a long time, people have said, how come Kent doesn't have its own brewery? Well, they've got vats in there. They do their own brewing in there. So if that's something you like, please check them out. Kind of taking a jump across the river there. The River Merchant had a great first couple months. So that's down there on 43 North. Sadly, COVID put the skids on that temporarily, although they're back in business again, and they're doing well. It's just their limitations, like all our businesses, in terms of social distancing and the amount of customers that can come in at any time. Heading back our way a little bit in that same corridor, there is a new concept that's in development called the Brew Pub. It's in the former church building there. There was the Martin property as well, R.W. Martin for a while. They have some really interesting ideas too, to make a brewery concept, some food. They were able to get, they went to the voters and asked for that to be no longer a wet district, at least that property. The district is still wet, but I'm sorry, I said that reversed, is still dry. They're able to sell alcohol on their property. So stay tuned for that. They're still saying like a late summer kind of opening. Cool building, locally owned, locally operated, local brewery, brewer, lady. And so that's exciting. I mean, I think that's another really good fit for Kent. And one of the things I like so much about it, if you step back a little bit, remember I said early on that we always hoped that the downtown would be a platform for growth, and that's exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing growth happening further and further outside the downtown. We're starting to get questions, hey, can you extend the downtown outdoor refreshment area all the way down there? Can it go across the river? I mean, those are all conversations that a couple of years ago we would have said, that's crazy. But now it's like, no, it's working. That kind of stuff. We're seeing revitalization. The LN Gross building, again, it's very, it's kind of a quiet operation, but they're doing great. They added another shift for the water bottling. I mean, you and I probably don't see it a lot, but they have sales all across the country. They tend to sell their water to fitness clubs. And like I said, it's such a big seller for them that they added a night shift. So I think they're working 24-hour shifts now. It's mostly automated, so it's not huge employment, but still obviously it was a fantastic restoration of the building. I think there is still some space in there. I think, DS Architects hasn't occupied that full space anymore as they've ridden the highs and the lows of their industry. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that kind of get taken up soon. Across the street too, I know the Unitarian Church has done that little back room, the community room, I think, and we've been working with them about connecting to the parking area. So I mean, there's a lot of little bits and pieces over there, and little stuff starts to add up. One of the other ones sort of is the exclamation point, I think, in that corridor from the Fairchild Bridge to Main Street. I'm going to say can't remember the dollar amount, maybe 3 million for the trail improvement. So that'll be done this year. So the hike and bike trail that runs through there, it's going to be widened, improved. There's going to be new overlooks. There's going to be a direct access up to basically Rick's family's furniture store there. It'll go right up it's kind of awkward now. You got to go under the bridge and you kind of got to like hike up the stairs. Well, this is actually designed to be able to get you up there easily, right up to this side, that side, the north side. And it's got some really cool archways at the top. And so it's also got night lighting, which I always thought was one of those opportunities that we really haven't taken advantage of. I still think we could do some night lighting at the dam in the summer, but for now, I'm happy with night lighting of all the trees along that river walk between, as I said, Fairchild and Main Street. That'll be this summer, so we're pretty excited about that. Of course, just down there, not too far from Tom and the school system, Roosevelt, is Davy Tree's campus expansion. They got a big project where they're adding sort of another leg to their campus. We're real excited about it. It's just more reinvestment in their hometown, and the more they spend, the less likely they are to ever leave. So I'm really happy about that. They're a great corporate partner. Obviously, they're still in our downtown, but they even rent spaces in West River Place, and so they're popping at the gills. It's hard to open the newspaper and not see another story about Davy acquiring some landscape company somewhere. So good news for them. They keep expanding, and keep in mind too that they bought the Oak Knolls property across the street. And we have ongoing conversations with them about what it will take to get their water, sewer connected over there, possible driveway issues. As they rolled out, I want to say it was 18 months ago, they rolled out their kind of master plan concept for that property. It's like a research facility, very hands-on. It's going to be a training and research facility, bringing in people from all across the country. Anybody that's part of the Davy family will be trained in there, which again, is this ecosystem works really good for our downtown hotel, which needs to get bookings so those people can stay there when they're in town to get trained at Davy Tree. And while they're staying in the hotel, they walk across the street and enjoy our downtown. And speaking of the hotel management group recently changed. There was a 7-year window where the ownership group had to stay in place for some tax market issues. Well, when they hit the 7th year, there was a transition in the ownership group. Kent State is really excited about the new ownership team. They're one of the premier boutique hotel, and they do a lot in college towns. So they're anxious to kind of let them get rolling here, get some traction. I will say this, in the early conversations with them, they noted that one of the things that this group has typically done very well is kind of a mid to higher end restaurant in their property. That's not really happened so far with the current Kent State Hotel. And so I'm, fingers crossed, I kind of like what they're saying, especially with Trano currently, at least that property, we sort of lost one of our premier, I say higher end, it's just not fast casual, right? Higher end property. So if the hotel wants to fill that gap, we're all for it. I need to take a breath. What's that? Peace? I'm out of time. Oh, good Lord.
Yeah, that's where I was headed.
Yeah. So a couple of things I will, since we'll circle back to COVID a little bit here, because our health department, you may or may not have known that our health department moved to the second floor of the PARTA building. Yes, thumbs up from Rick, and that's been great. We're part owner of it, so we want to see tenants in there too. And that second floor is great space, but it just hasn't found a natural tenant. So Joan is in there. She's doing so good that she asked me, hey, can I get the first floor? Because, Cutler Realty is no longer using that space on the first floor. And as Mr. Burbick's properties, they're kind of in transition as well. Right now, Mr. Burbick's Phoenix property owns or as the master lease for all that ground floor space over there. And there's uncertainty how that's going to play out as Ron transitions, his family transitions out of the business. So we're taking a pretty serious look at the first floor Cutler building. And in particular, that would be for Joan wants to have, she's in the process of becoming a vaccinator, so she could be a recipient of vaccines. So right now we rely on Portage County Health Department or the private guys, the CVSs of the world. But Joan really wants to be a part of that. So she's doing that. I'd be remiss if I didn't say, you can't see it every day, but the level of partnership with Kent State on this COVID is off the charts. As proud as I am back with the downtown and the stress that took and the collaboration that took, that's nothing compared to the what's happening with COVID. I mean, every day we're working hand in hand with them. They have expertise, we bring expertise. It's like an extended staff both ways. And I say that as it's important for you to know that, because I know early on, it was really easy to say, cases are rising, it's all Kent State students' faults, or it's all Kent State's fault. What are they doing? Are they doing enough? I don't know if any of us can do enough. The phrase that I use with Joan all the time is, I feel like I'm standing on a shore. So I'm with Jim down in Hilton Head, and I'm working 24 hours a day for 11 months now to build a 10-foot wall to try to stop a 100-foot tidal wave. I mean, you're like working your tail off, but it seems like it's almost, is it worth it? I mean, yes, you have to do it, but it is a bit overwhelming task. The only way you get through it, the only way you survive is collaboration and partnership. And please know that Kent State is 100% in. I'd be straight with you. I mean, Todd, but the rest of the staff up there is phenomenal. So I'm sorry, I literally have 3 more pages that I could talk about. Doug Fuller asked me specifically about the zoning code update. That is so boring. There is no way I'm talking about that with this group, but I will email Doug. I'm happy to email Doug the update on that. And forgive me, I left so much off, but hopefully that's mostly upbeat. I'll end it more upbeat rather than the negative stuff. So.
All right. Well, thank you much. I'm not sure we have time for questions right now, but if you can hang around a little bit afterwards, maybe we could shoot a few questions at you. But as I'm sure you're well aware, we always have a responder to our speakers. And today that is George Joseph. So George, take it away.
Well, Dave, I just wanted to thank you again for sharing with our fellow Rotarians. I just wanted to recap some of the things that you provided. And honestly, Dave, I was thinking when Todd asked me, would I do this? I was thinking, geez, I wonder what Dave's going to talk about because of COVID-19. Well, Dave, I was completely off base. You talked about the Northwater Brewing Company opening, the River Merchant opening, and opening during COVID. During COVID-19, these places opened. The Wendy's, East Main Street redoing their building. Uncle Mattio's, which is right across from where you are. I can't wait to try their pizza. I've heard about it, never tried it. The apartment complexes of 35 or 32 apartments, which again is happening regardless of COVID-19. And then the great news that you provided is Barrio's expanding. Yes, some of our places closed like Trino, But you talked about the 3 C's, the creativity, the collaboration, the cooperation, and then you went on to say with the collaboration, if you have any ideas, please share them. You are open to those suggestions. With creativity, you talked about social distancing and opening the street for dining on Franklin. There's so much that you did prove that we do have a lot to be proud of, not only as a city, but as a Rotary Club. So once again, thank you for sharing with our Rotarians, and you really did give us an upbeat rather than just a COVID-19 downer. So thank you.
Okay. Thanks, George.
All right. Thank you, George. Truly, that was an amazing amount of information in a very short period of time. We really appreciate it. I had no idea there was all these things going on in this current environment. It's really, as George has said, very uplifting. So thank you all, and we're going to officially end this, but if anyone wants to hang around for a few minutes, that's fine.
Hey, Tom Hall.